Blood for Limbs by Natasha Smith. My husband lay in the hotel room, asleep. Blood had soaked through his clothes and his hands. He was always a messy eater. It wasn't unusual for me to clean up the bodies, but this time I was a little concerned. As for myself, I wasn't a stranger to killing. 2 years ago, my husband and I were the happiest couple in the world. I know they say everyone's love is special, but ours burned with a special intensity. He was a veteran, a defender of this wonderful country. We decided to marry after his tour was done. Perhaps it was all that horror he had witnessed that made him love me so much more. That was until a drunk driver had hit our vehicle. I was fine, a few cuts and scratches. The driver had turned my husband's side of the car into a tin can and then fled on foot. They had to extract him with the jaws of life, and when they brought him to the hospital, he was paralyzed from the neck down, all of his limbs just useless. I might have admittedly gotten a little upset at this point. I got a gun and found the guy who had done it. 3 bullets later, and he was dead. Getting rid of the body had been an exhausting task, but I had no desire to go to jail. The next morning, my husband's toes started to move, then his feet. The doctors called it a miracle. I knew better. Something had happened after I shot the driver, but I didn't know what at that point. He left the hospital 3 months later with barely any physio needed. We celebrated, made love, swore never to take anything for granted again. But one night was different. We were eating supper, and he had an odd look in his eyes. I went to bed feeling disturbed. I found him the next morning covered in blood. The neighbor, on the other hand, was completely drained of it. My husband sobbed as he realized what he had done. He confessed he knew that I had killed the man that had paralyzed him. An apparition, perhaps death itself, had come to him in the middle of the night in the hospital and said I had denied him his kill, a chance to feed on his soul. What soul? I asked him scornfully. My husband ignored this as he continued. The apparition had healed his body, but in exchange we owed him 4 lives, one for each of his limbs that had been healed. I thought about this. Does the man I killed count as one? My husband didn't know, but he had been assured the people that he murdered were bad people. So, in my mind, there was nothing to worry about. I had killed a drunk driver and felt nothing. Our neighbor wasn't exactly a saint either, having cheated on his wife. But my husband had killed many in the war. He had no desire to kill again. It took days of consoling him, but this was a done deal. It was going to happen regardless, but only for a few more times. Then we would be free. The cops soon considered us as suspects. We fled the province, going from hotel to hotel. I didn't mind the travel though. It made us closer. The second time he killed were 2 hikers in the mountains. Once again, there was that odd look in his eyes. There was nothing human in that look. He preferred to kill at night. This time I followed him and watched as he drained their blood with his teeth. It was easy to clean up the bodies and bury them in the woods. I wondered what they did to be labeled as bad souls. I found that I didn't care too much about it. Life stopped being fair for both of us a while ago. And if the apparition was right, there was only one more person left to kill, and this nightmare we shared would be over. I was wrong. The next morning, all the hotel staff were dead, drained of blood. This was different. There were now at least 10 bodies. The apparition had lied to us. They couldn't have all been bad. As I studied the scene, the only thing I could think was how difficult it would be to clean up after 10 bodies. Perhaps setting the building on fire would be the best way to go. I'm not sure when I had lost so much humanity. But the possibility of my husband killing nonstop, that didn't matter to me as long as I could be with him. He was the only thing I had left. I sat down at the table with him. He never eats normal food anymore, but I asked him anyway, "What would you like to eat this morning?" He looked right at me with that odd look in his eyes, and he smiled.